What's up, guys? Hope you're well. Welcome to meditation session number 12. This week's theme, we are going to speak about self-awareness. We are going to look at what self-awareness is, how do you become self-aware, and how can you actually use self-awareness in your day-to-day life? How can it become a practical concept? A small change in this week's session is that we are not going to be doing a guided meditation, but rather just a meditation without any audio aid. No YouTube videos, no apps, just sitting in complete silence. And the reason being is because, every time I meditate, I don't actually use an app or YouTube or anything like that. And the reason being is I just think it's far more beneficial to just be alone with your own thoughts, to just do some self-reflection, to not have any distractions. And I do think there's definitely practical uses for an app and for YouTube videos, mainly if you're just starting out meditating. And the idea of meditating seems very daunting, very intimidating. I think it's a great way to get started on the meditation journey. But if you have been meditating since the first video and you've gone a bit further along the path, or you just been meditating for a while in general, I think it's always good to at least use the app or use YouTube or whatever it is a little bit less, just so you get more used to meditating with just yourself. And another benefit I think that comes from that is that you're able to use your meditative state beyond just your hour of meditation, your 5 minutes of meditation, however long it is per day. So in your day-to-day life, when something happens, you're able to just recenter, go back into your meditative zone, and come out with a better outcome than you would have previously. Okay, so what is self-awareness? Self-awareness, I think, is basically just knowing yourself, as the word implies, knowing how you best interact with the world, knowing about how you best function, knowing about how you best function in all areas of your life. So that will be, put out to your relationships, your personal relationships, your working environment, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is basically, are you able to be aware of how you best function in the world? And I think, the core of how do you best function in the world comes down to emotional intelligence. I think self-awareness is a process that perhaps, many of us hear about, we read about it somewhere, but actually getting into the practical elements, actually, delving into what is self-awareness is a process that not many take on, and not many perhaps take on, as seriously as they should. And I think the reason being is because the results that you would receive from practicing something that gets you to a place to realize you're self-aware are not as tangible as something as, perhaps going to the gym, working out, growing some muscles, or, starting a business, gaining some revenue, things like that. Self-awareness, the benefits that come from it are more, intangible. You can't see them, you can't hold them, but it makes perhaps the biggest difference that you could ever imagine to your life. And the reason being is because, if you're self-aware, if you know how you function, and the reason I relate this to emotional intelligence is because ultimately we are all emotional beings. The quality of our emotions determines the quality of our lives. If we have negative emotions all the time, we're going to live a pretty negative life. If we have happy emotions all the time, we're going to live a pretty happy life. If there's a combination, we're going to live a life that's sort of in the middle between negative and positive. And what ultimately, what we want to do is, whatever life throws our way, we need to know how best we function in order to come out on top of that situation. So if life throws us something and we do not know how we function as an individual, if we are not emotionally intelligent, if our self-awareness is not something that we focus on, then we're not going to know how to effectively deal with that situation. We're not going to be able to come out on top. Life is always going to be the dominant person in the relationship, and you're going to ultimately live a life of reaction. And a life of reaction basically just means whatever is presented to you, you aren't able to take a step back, ask yourself a few questions. How do you want to proceed? All that's happening is an instant reaction. So as soon as something happens, you react instantly and you deal with the consequences after. But a self-aware person, as soon as you become more self-aware, you're able to create more often. You're not living in a state of reaction, but rather a state of creation. And the difference between those two states is huge. And you can only create and constantly create if you are self-aware. Because even when life throws you something, you're able to take a step back, and instead of reacting immediately, you can say, how do I want to carry on with the situation? You can create the new outcome, and that is ultimately what I believe self-awareness is. It is the ability to know how you best function in the world, and use those skills, use your emotional intelligence to make sure that whatever happens in relation to your life, you're able to come out with a positive outlook. So how do you become self-aware? I think that question, if somebody can give you a definite answer to how you become self-aware, and you can just sort of create a formula around that, you have the next wealthiest person in the world. But I do think self-awareness, definitely, there are certain tips that you can give, people who have become more self-aware. I've certainly learned, I started this journey learning from more self-aware people and just taking out a few things from what they say, applying it to my life. So there's definitely advice that can be given around self-awareness. And, I don't think that somebody can say to you that in doing exactly this, you will become self-aware, because self-awareness is something that you have to give yourself. No one else can give you self-awareness. No one else can bottle it up and say, here's self-awareness, or, just read this book, or just go to varsity and you get your degree in self-awareness. Nothing like that. Only you can give it to yourself. And just like anything else, I think it takes a lot of practice. It's a daily commitment. It's a moment-to-moment commitment. And, definitely a path worth pursuing. So I know in my life, at least, I have certainly become more self-aware. And the reason I say that is purely because events that used to happen to me, I used to perhaps get a little bit cross or lose my temper a little bit or react a certain way. And since my process of, starting mindfulness training, meditation, all that sort of stuff, since I started that about 6 years ago, I've seen a very tangible, very clear change in relation to how I react to certain events, into how I know I best function in the world. And when certain events take place, I know that in just being able to get back to a place of complete calmness, of not letting thoughts run around all over in my head, that I'm able to just put that situation aside and not react to it. Whereas in the past, it might have been a bit of a different outcome. So how I have spent my time becoming more self-aware, I would say that definitely the biggest tool that I could recommend is definitely meditation. And meditation is not only the hour or however long you want to meditate for per day, it's the hours, the minutes, the seconds that come after that. It's how do you live the rest of your life. Ultimately, meditation is the act, is the art, is the skill of doing absolutely nothing. When a thought enters into your head, you just observe it, watch it flow out, and don't let it become a part of who you are. So I think the best tool that I could recommend for becoming self-aware is meditation. The few moments that you spend alone, sitting on your bed, sitting on the floor, whatever it is, those are moments that, if you've never meditated before, you don't have a mindful practice. It's moments that you've never had with yourself. It's an experience that you've never given to yourself. And in those moments of deep self-reflection, of actually going deep and down and far in depth into your darkest thoughts, you kind of come out the other end with a different perspective of who you are. There's also the other area, and of meditation where it can be related to psychedelics in a sense, where obviously, you get those visions, those awesome colors, all that sort of stuff, and just a feeling of ultimate peace, of ultimate oneness. And the more you do that process, the more you meditate, the more consistent you are with that practice, the more that way of thinking becomes, and you are able to create. So not only do you become more self-aware of who you are, but you are able to create the self that you want to be aware of. So, generally, I think we all fall into the trap of believing we are a certain way, or we have lived life a certain way, and therefore that's who we are. So self-awareness, I think, also in a sense is not only the process of becoming aware of who you are, but also the process of having the ability to become aware that you can create the self who you want to be aware of. So I think that could maybe be a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but the basic idea is that through meditation, through these mindful practices, you have the ability to see yourself in a different light, from a different perspective, and become more self-aware. I think there's definitely, I know there's definitely more tools, more techniques that you can use to become self-aware. You don't have to meditate. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Whatever tool you find works for you is what you should do. Whether that's literally just, ultimately I think spirituality and meditation and all of this and all of that is about, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're a banker, it doesn't matter if you're a waitress, a waiter, an actor, an entrepreneur. But the point is that it doesn't matter what you do, but how you do it. So, while you're at your day job, even if you're just washing the dishes, just making sure that you are fully immersed in that moment, and the only thing that you are thinking of is washing the dishes, and then you're not thinking about what's happening next, or what's happened in your past. So whatever practice you can find that emulates that thought process, that act of non-thinking, and of only, if you do think, just thinking of what you are doing, I think that will definitely help you move towards becoming more self-aware. So, if you just want to sit down and watch the trees, watch how the trees move, but only focusing on the trees. If you're having lunch and you're only focusing on your chewing, if you're gymming and you're only focusing on your reps, whatever it is, anything like that, I think will definitely help you become more self-aware. Also, I think reading books on people that are self-aware individuals, so like Eckhart Tolle, Osho, Wayne Dyer, any sort of these smart people, these spiritual people who have gone through the process of self-reflection, of deep reflection, and have become self-aware to an extent, I think that can also certainly help you. Because also, no one is born knowing these sort of things. You have to get told these things by other people. So, reading books, I think meditation for sure, yoga, exercise, all that sort of stuff will definitely help you along the path of self-awareness. And mostly it's just, self-awareness is something that can take place throughout the day. It's not going to take place throughout the day because, anyone who can be completely aware every second of the day, I don't think would function too well in this world. But it is certainly something that you can practice more often than you think, and is definitely going to be a benefit to your life. How can self-awareness help you in your daily life? How can it be a practical tool, a practical idea that you can apply to your life? And I think self-awareness is perhaps the most practical way to think about life. Once you know who you are, once you know how you best function in the world, that automatically sets you up to not accept and to not do things that you don't enjoy. And, so first of all, a self-aware person isn't necessarily going to spend time doing something that they don't love, because they are fully immersed in each moment, fully aware of each moment. And when you're more aware of each moment, any pain that's associated to that moment as well, even if it's, something as doing a job that you don't like, it's something that you will not tolerate anymore. So the first thing about how self-awareness can be applied practically is, I think, to the working environment. So once you become more self-aware, or you create the self to be aware of, you know, you get more of an idea as to what you want to do with your life, what actually makes you happy, not what you think makes you happy, but what actually makes you happy, not what other people, you know, think should make you happy, or what you think you were supposed to be doing. You know, you figure out what are you actually enjoying, what are you actually doing when you're enjoying life, and then, you know, you can focus more on that. And the beauty of the world that we live in now is that, you know, we don't live 20 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it is, where, you know, we didn't have access to start things that we didn't enjoy. Now, whatever you enjoy, you know, you can focus on. And if you're just willing to put enough work into it, enough time into it, you know, focus on it, you can make a living out of it. If you see some of the crazy businesses that are going on right now, you know, it's if you said to someone however many years ago, 10, 20 years ago, that that's what you would be doing, they would have laughed right in your face. You know, there's things now like, obviously, video gamers are getting paid a fortune. Video game commentators are getting paid a fortune. So, you know, really is no excuse these days anymore. You know, just with access to a phone, internet connection, and obviously that's not available to all, but to most people, anyone who's, I guess, watching this video, you know, there's no excuse to not do what you love. And that's not to say you have to stop exactly what you're doing right now and move straight into it, but you can certainly do it on the side, you know. It's just, you know, so something like being self-aware can absolutely help you in relation to your work. And beyond that also, I think it is, you know, being self-aware in relation to how will you best fit into the working environment. So I think something like at least entrepreneurship has become, you know, quite sexy. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur because they want to live the lifestyle, they want to have the cars and the boats and all that sort of stuff. That's not what entrepreneurship is anyway. But it's, you know, if you only want to be an entrepreneur for that sort of stuff, you know, and you're not really self-aware, you know, you're going to fail very fast, very quickly, and you probably won't come back from it purely just because you're doing things for the wrong reasons. So I think self-awareness can also help with that journey. So, you know, if you are a self-aware person and you really want to be an entrepreneur, but you realize that perhaps it's just not for you, maybe the best role for you is to be a number 2 in a company, number 3 in a company, you know, whatever it is, just because you're a self-aware person, maybe you'll go get a couple extra mates, and you'll start a business, and because you were self-aware, it became more successful. I think a second area that self-awareness can really be helpful in, and you can have some practical use for it, is in personal relationships. You know, no personal relationship is completely smooth running, whether it be with your friends, your partners, husbands, wives, you know, working relationship, whatever it is. You know, there's always going to be ups and downs, and, you know, I think sometimes things are completely misinterpreted, and that's where, you know, fights start from, or, you know, miscommunication happens, and, you know, those sort of things. And if you are not self-aware, it's very easy to take those things as an attack on you personally, when in reality it wasn't meant like that at all. You know, if you think you're being attacked, you're going to attack back at that person. And, you know, if you're self-aware, it really does help you a lot in your relationships, because, you know, first of all, you are more emotionally intelligent. So, you know, you will understand where that person is coming from. Try to put yourself in that person's shoes, and, you know, ultimately just resolve the conflict much smoother and much easier. You know, also, if you're more self-aware, you know where your value comes from. You know that your value, your happiness comes from inside of you. It does not come from anyone else's opinions of who you are. And that includes your partners, that includes your best friends, that includes, you know, superiors at work, whoever it may be, whoever you may look up to or have respect for. You know, your value is not attached to them in the slightest. And I think having that opinion, and I think that does come with self-awareness. You know, if you do get into an argument, you know that where your value comes from, so you won't feel the need to attack that person. You won't feel the need to defend yourself as perhaps you should. But I do think that, you know, having that perception and, you know, just that self-awareness of where your value comes from certainly will help you out. a whole lot in your relationships. And another area I think self-awareness can really help you out in is just in your own life, just in your day-to-day, in not even interactions, just in your day-to-day moments with just you, just yourself. I think that most people in the world, the vast majority, in fact, just can't be alone with themselves. There's a big difference between being alone and being lonely. And, when you're alone, you know, and if you're not self aware, if you do not enjoy spending time with yourself, those moments are going to be absolute torture. It's going to be, oh man, I need to go on social media, I need to go chat to my friends, I need to go do something, I need to be out of my own space, out of my own environment. But if you're more self-aware, if you've spent time with yourself, spend time meditating, those moments not only become tolerable, but completely enjoyable. You have a completely different outlook on your alone time. And just in whatever you do, if you're reading, if you are going for a walk, just sitting outside, it's, just being alone with yourself, just being self-aware with someone that you actually enjoy, your life becomes the quality of life increases exponentially. And I think that is ultimately, one of the greatest benefits of becoming self-aware. Because if you can spend time alone and, really love spending time with yourself and improving upon that time, your general experience in the world and the quality of your life is just going to be so much better. Alright guys, so that was just a little bit about self-awareness. I hope it helped out a bit. And yeah, just, I think the best time to start the journey of self-awareness is right now. Do some research into some tools you can use. You're welcome to message me. Happy to have a chat with you about, anything that I can help out with, especially, meditation, that sort of stuff. So yeah, guys, hope that helped out. And we are going to begin the meditation today. I think it's quite cool that in the discussion about self-awareness, today's session does not have any audio attached to it. So, I'm just going to be sitting here meditating. I'm just going to set a timer I'll make it 10 minutes. So not too long at all. Hope you guys enjoy. Close your eyes. Do some deep self-reflection. Really get into who you are. Get into the idea of who you want to be. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, guys. Alright guys, that is the 10-minute meditation. I really enjoyed that. Hope you guys did too. Hopefully this week you can practice some self-awareness tools, some techniques, and just apply it to the rest of your life. Cool guys, see you next week.